This is Cher, and I'm here with Jason and Rob. Guys, if you had to describe this podcast in 5 words or less, what would you say?
I'm going to go with Wile E. Coyote guzzling gasoline.
I'm thinking climate change, diarrhea, hurricane.
Are you serious? Maybe I should do this thing on my own.
Fine. It's a show about how to stay sane in a world where there's too many people consuming too much stuff and the planet can't take it anymore.
You had me at diarrhea.
Caution, if you're allergic to 4-letter words, you might want to try a different podcast. Hey, you guys ever notice the weird way that cars are named after the thing they destroy?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Toyota.
what? What do you mean?
Toyota Tundra. That's my favorite.
Toyota Tundra. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put up enough emissions and the Tundra just melts away.
Then
The GMC Denali.
Yeah, the Denali. That's what I was just thinking of.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if it's still around, but I remember the Tahoe, you just dumping a bunch of
The
stuff
lake
in
is
the lake.
still there, but, it's...
Filled with oil. But.
Right, well, it's,
Yeah.
it's not getting replenished very much, yeah.
Yeah, well, the best one has got to be, in my mind, the Lincoln Town Car. The car just destroyed the town.
That's true.
Can you still get those, or do you have to be over 90 years old in
I don't
order
know,
to
is
get
Lincoln
one?
still around? Lincoln Town Car not only destroyed the town, but destroyed itself.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, yeah, isn't...
I think you have to be Abraham Lincoln's age to qualify to drive
drive one of those? Yeah. Well, what about all of the Volkswagen ones?
Volkswagen.
What do you mean?
That's
Yeah.
the best.
Golfing?
Yeah, so Golf, that's actually named after the Gulf Stream.
Oh, that's screwed. That's going to die.
Yeah, think about that, right?
I
The
had
Gulf
no idea.
Stream. Yeah.
I thought it was like this sport where people wear funny
No,
pants.
it's like the Gulf Stream.
Wait a minute, are you calling golf a sport? Because we're going to have a debate about
That's
that.
a whole other
Tennis is
episode
the best
of this
sport.
podcast.
Tennis.
No, but think about that. Like with climate change, we're completely messing
Okay.
up the Gulf Stream.
Well, what else? What else? The rabbit was that made after rabbits, right?
Yeah, well, there's probably a lot of roadkill.
Well, we're going to be eating lots of rabbits in the future, I think.
How many rabbits did Volkswagen rabbits run over in the street? That's a good...
I think you were obligated to drive over a rabbit when you saw
Right.
one if you were driving a rabbit.
Right.
That was my first car.
Well,
Yeah.
let's go to the Jetta, which I know was your first car, Asher.
Yeah.
You know what that's named after?
What?
The Jetstream.
No!
So we get the Gulf
That's
Stream
screwed.
and the Jet Stream.
They're both wacky.
German engineers know how to name their cars. They're like, this will replace the Jetstream. This will replace the Gulfstream. No more streams of any kind.
Well, what's funny is because Volkswagen is actually, the car of the people, right?
Ah, yes.
The wagon of the people. So we're doing a pretty good job of getting rid of those too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, cars are doing in people pretty good. No question about that.
Right.
I've learned some German today. Thank you.
Speaking of Volkswagen, they got to be like the most ridiculous car company. I remember a few years ago they had that huge emissions scandal.
Oh yeah, with their diesels, right?
Yeah, no, you remember what they were doing? Their diesels were emitting, whatever these pollutants, and they had the software set up to know when the car was being tested, and then it would tamp down the engine and the amount of pollution.
Farfid frickin' Nogan.
Right. So they had the technology, they had the actually ability to tamp down the emissions, but fuck, we only need to do that
when it's being tested
once every 2 years or whatever it is when you test the car.
Yeah,
that's
utterly ridiculous. Well, in terms of ridiculousness, it reminded me of this guy that I saw on TV a few years back. This story has really stuck with me when it comes to cars. This guy is a professor at UC Davis, University of California at Davis.
The Aggies.
Yeah, I
Isn't
see.
that your alma mater, man?
We.
Yeah, I see you nodding your head over here. Well, congratulations that you went to this guy's school.
Jason, you must be so proud.
This guy's name is Daniel Sperling. He's won all kinds of awards. I don't want to rail on him too much, but he appeared on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
Back in the day.
And I swear, when I was thinking of cars, I got to look up this guy and see how that episode went. So picture this wonky professor coming out under the big lights. Jon Stewart, he's super quick comedian. It was downright awkward, but that doesn't really, that doesn't really matter. What really matters is what this guy Sperling was saying. So he got on the show because he was talking about cars and he had a new book out. Okay. So let me give you the title of his book. 2 Billion Cars. Subtitle. driving towards sustainability.
Oxymoron much?
Oh no, this hurts.
Yeah. So his big thing was we got 1 billion cars in the world.
We
need twice as many.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Well, and that's his thing. Well, we're gonna have 2 billion no matter what. So we better get the right kind of cars. We're gonna have electric cars. We're gonna have cars with special biofuels. We're gonna have cars that run on fairy dust and
Flying.
and-
Can we have flying cars?
They're going to run on water, man.
Yeah, well, and it got really awkward as, he couldn't really even respond to Jon Stewart's jokes. It was kind of a mess, but he said some even more outlandish stuff. Stewart was like, well, how are we going to make this happen? How are we going to get there? And get this, and this is in 2009 when this episode aired. So Sperling says, well, we got to get a minimum price on gasoline, like something like $1.75 or $2.
Wait, no, he did not say that.
That's exactly what he said. $1.75.
Are you sure he wasn't talking about in liters?
Yeah. No, it was gallons. We don't. Come on, this is America.
No,
we're
I know.
not going to talk about liters.
I can't fathom this. $1.75?
Yeah, that was his. Like, we got to have a minimum price. Prices have to be so high that people will switch off gas. So we better keep it at $1.75.
The price of a cup of coffee. Cup of coffee. Sorry.
Wait, hold on a second. So does he know, or did he know that just a few months earlier, gas prices in 2008 got up to in some places close to $5 a gallon.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some professors. Do they know anything outside of
Maybe
campus?
he has. Yeah, exactly. He was just riding his bicycle around on campus. He had
It's a
no
good
idea.
campus for that.
Yeah, maybe he was stuck back in the 1970s.
Well, and look at gas prices now. In the U.S., it's around $3 a gallon.
$3.50.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
in some places higher. In
So
China.
we must be well on our way then. If
Right.
that's right.
Oh, right.
Well, okay, yeah, but so if you look at the last year that it's available, what percentage of cars sold in the U.S. were not gasoline? It's amazingly tiny. So gasoline-powered cars, only gasoline. 97.2% of new cars sold in the U.S.
Oh, poor Daniel. He's not feeling good about this, is he?
Well, that's probably a lot higher than what it was at that point. Right?
Yeah, but still, it's not enough. This is 9 years later.
Yeah. 2% of cars sold are hybrid, which means 0.4% are fully electric and 0.4% are a combo, like a plug-in hybrid.
Nice.
Ouchie.
Yeah. It's
Baby steps, people. Baby steps.
Well, and we've got growth. There are more cars in the world.
Okay.
Estimate is 1.4 billion. So we're on our way to 2. The amount of vehicle miles traveled in the U.S. has increased by about 10% since then.
It went down for a while. After
Yeah, it was
that.
down for a while during the recession.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be the one thing that can curb emissions is a recession. So maybe
Or high prices,
High prices.
but $1.75.
$1.75.
That's so strange.
Yeah, well, the last 10 years have not been so kind to Daniel Sperling and his predictions, but I think it's been, when you think about the damage that cars have caused, it's horrendous.
Well,
Yeah. How can you say driving to sustainability when it's like driving us extinct,
that gets to the fact that, he was right in a certain way of saying, like, it was sort of inconceivable that we wouldn't be driving more cars, right?
Yeah.
We're just sort of locked into this idea of cars. And obviously we're not anywhere near driving to sustainability, but we seem to be, I don't know, we seem to be complacent or okay with all of the downsides of cars. We were just joking about, nature being done in, but if you think about the toll on human lives, it's pretty profound. Let's see, over the last 15 years, right?
Okay.
Last 15 years. So around, the turn of the century, a little bit after that, you want to guess how many people have died, on highways and streets?
12, 13,
You're
27.
It's like a war every year.
We're talking 400,000 people. It's 53,000 people a year.
Yeah.
Who are dying because of toxic tailpipe emissions, and 400,000 in that time period from accidents that happen on roads. That's insane. That's that's I mean, you're right to compare
Yeah.
it to war.
It's like
right?
war. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Like a pretty good sized war too.
So, Jason, I think you're not going to be hired on to write the subtitle for any of these books. You're like driving to war, driving to extinction,
Exactly.
driving to the big shit show. Like they're not going to sell many copies.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta think here if you want that job.
Yeah,
Put a positive
the
spin
PR
on it.
division of Jeep is not going to hire me.
And we've been, on the death side of the equation. I mean, we've been kind of okay or living with that reality since sort of the beginning. I remember reading about all the deaths and accidents that were caused when people were first driving. This is before there were people having to take tests to get a driver's license.
Yeah, there were less than a billion cars back then.
Oh yeah, definitely. So like 1925. Okay, this was in the early days of cars. I mean, I think the Model T came out. I think it was 1908. Okay, so not much later than that, right? 1925. Auto accidents accounted for two-thirds of the entire death toll in cities that were larger than 25,000 people. Wow. Two-thirds.
Jeez.
And it's not like people were like super healthy and, there weren't other things killing people at the
They were like leaving the speakeasy.
Maybe it was by choice. Maybe like you get to be, I don't know, 65, you're retiring, and they just put you in the street and run you over. Was that it?
I don't know. I honestly people didn't know what the fuck that they were doing. But still, okay, yes, we have the population of people that are dying, in auto accidents has gone way down as a per capita percentage, but
it's still a lot.
That. Yeah. It's a lot of fucking people,
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Well, and I don't know about you guys, but it seems like most people you talk to have been touched by some kind of tragedy.
Yep, I have.
Friend, family. I know, in fact, while you were talking to Cher, I was thinking maybe this is why I rebel against cars and have, a sort of a beef, or a bone to pick with them is, in my family, I have an uncle, who was just, kind of one of these people that everything he does, kind of turned to gold, and his son, my cousin, they were killed by a drunk driver, and it really affected our family. And I think you're right that we tend to disregard or sort of put aside the dangers, and we kind of live with this risk. But people who have been touched by that kind of tragedy, there's a real reason to rebel against this. This kind of car culture.
I'll tell you a story. Like when I was maybe 14, I was riding my bike, and in front of my house, basically, I was riding, sort of weaving in and out between the sidewalk and the street, going up and down driveways. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing. I was kind of goofing around, and sort of just further down the street, it goes downhill, and there was a car that was actually coming up that hill, cresting it, and I was on the wrong side of the street. And I look up, and all of a sudden, there's this car there, and the woman who was driving it saw me, and she like slammed on the brakes, but it was too late.
Was it a Ford bike? The thing that it destroys.
Ford cyclist? No, it was not.
Ford teenage boy out having fun.
Yeah, so I slammed right into it, and
wait. I think we can call it slammed right into you, can't we?
We were both moving.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to take actually responsibility for most of this.
Yeah, it didn't sound like you were
one,
doing
right?
a really good job there riding your bike.
So I still have this like visceral memory of like looking down, right? I hit the front of the car, I looked down, and
Time slowed.
It did.
Yeah.
I see my handlebars going through between my legs, right? and then I do a flip over the car, literally flip over the car, and happen to magically land on my hands and knees. Oh. Okay. And then I look behind me, and I see my bike also flipping in the air,
eclipsing the sun as it's coming
down. And then
down
it slams right into me, hits me in the head, it knocks me out a little bit.
That's okay. Your helmet protected you, right?
I wasn't wearing.
There's no helmets back then.
I was not wearing a helmet. Now I got super lucky. I had a minor concussion. They did take me to the hospital. My poor mom, she was in the house. She heard this thing. She heard this screech, slam, boom.
She heard the thud of bike to skull.
Yeah, it was. I think I probably shortened her life quite a bit. But But my point is that was a really close call. I think a lot of us
had a close call.
Have had close calls driving or being passenger in a car or being a pedestrian or whatever.
Yeah.
But 2 years later, I get my driver's license. I'm like all psyched, and I'm driving like a motherfucking idiot, I'm driving this 2-ton weapon and just reveling in the freedom I have the windows open, blasting music. It was like having the time of my life driving around.
It's become so casual. I mean, when I was a kid, I remember going to soccer practice in the bed of my friend's dad's pickup, right? There's like 4 of us kids right in the pickup of a bed.
Yeah. So bad. But it's not just, what I was recently taken back by a New York Times article about the roadkill in Brazil. Brazil's the most biodiverse country in the world, and all these new roads are going in through the Amazon, and it's just like slaughtering an estimated 1.3 million animals every day.
What? Wait.
Yeah.
You mean a year?
No.
A day?
1.3 million animals
a day.
Just getting pancaked on the road. It's it's for a southern man like me, it's a dream. I just get out there with a spatula and I scoop them all up.
It's like possums.
Taking them home. Yeah, eating like some caiman tail or something. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it's just nuts. It's just absolutely nuts. And in the U.S., I mean, of course, we've all seen plenty of deer and raccoons and crows or whatever. But in New York State, about 65,000 deer each year are killed.
Just in New York State?
Yeah.
I've been hit by a deer in a car.
Poor thing.
Yeah. And the car did not hit the deer. Like, the guy who was driving hit the brakes, and the deer ran into the side of the car, like smacked it with its head, and then ran off.
Jeez.
But actually dented the car. We had to go get it fixed.
I hope the deer's
all right. How
did
it taste? Did he eat it?
No, I mean, it ran off.
Oh.
But I got 2 more good,
Okay.
well, I was going to say deer stories. The first one's an elk story. A friend of mine was driving her truck along a highway, and an elk came through her windshield, and it was like still alive, like kicking her in the face and the neck and stuff. And I don't know if most people are familiar with elk, but yeah,
they're quite large.
It could be like a 400, 500-pound animal.
Well, there are 1,000-pound elk around here.
Yeah. And in another instance, I mean, this is, I think, getting to that, makes that 65,000 number. Like, if I know these people who are getting hit by deer and hitting deer, a friend of mine, he used to go hunting with his family. And they were driving 2 trucks, a little bit before dawn to get to the site where they wanted to go hunting. And my friend was in the lead pickup truck, and they were going along, and he looked back and noticed that the truck behind him wasn't there anymore. Like, what the hell? Where'd they go? So they pulled over and waited, and then they're like, okay, we got to go back. So they went back, and they found the other truck, and that truck had hit a deer and killed it. So they just loaded it up in the truck. Hunting done. Time to go home.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a family I knew. They were called the Hendersons, and they went on a camping trip, and they hit a Bigfoot.
Oh.
And then they stuck that on the top of their car. I think they made a documentary.
I didn't know
that.
you knew them, because, I mean...
And then they called it Harry.
Yeah.
Your kids are younger than mine. I missed that one.
I know... Don't worry. I know all the 80s movies.
That's an
this
80s
is
movie?
John Lithgow.
Harry and the Hendersons.
This was the pinnacle of his career.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was it even bigger than Third Rock, that horrendous TV show?
No, I'm just talking about the quality of the production and the storytelling. Yeah.
I missed out.
Yeah, you really did. We'll get that on Netflix for you later.
Okay, so we're talking about human deaths, animal deaths. Any other issues with cars that we can think of?
Yeah, I got an issue. Why don't we just talk about the colossal waste that cars are? When you look at spending money, a car has got to be the worst investment. And a lot of people are starting to realize that. You get millennials who are like, I'm not going to buy a car. That's a ridiculous. As soon as you start driving it, the depreciation kicks in.
Right, they can't afford insurance.
Well, do you guys know the average car owner in the U.S. pays $12,500 a year for their car? That's sort of taking into account the purchase price or the lease, the gas, the insurance, the wear and tear, all of that.
That totally sounds right.
That's like $1 a mile, right? Because doesn't the average car go
it's
about
$1 a mile?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and even Morgan Stanley, the revered investment bank, which maybe we'd have some down things to say about them, but we'll save that. they call cars the world's most underutilized asset. And the reason they do that is because you're spending all that money, and yet each car is only driven around for about 14 hours a week.
Wow.
So, if you start doing the math on that, it's like you're basically paying, $18, $20 an hour for driving your car.
Wow.
Well, so I guess the solution there is to utilize it more, right? Is that what Morgan?
Yeah, you should drive all the time.
Yeah, drive all the. Actually, I gotta say, 14 hours a week. That's 2 hours a day.
That's a lot.
That actually feels like a lot to me.
I'm glad I don't spend that much time.
That sounds miserable.
Yeah.
Well, we don't live in a place where we have to commute for an hour each way.
That's true, but you're paying out the nose to do something that fucking sucks.
Yeah, well, that's why with road rage, why everybody's so angry at one another. They're
Well,
in their car too much.
We all pay out the nose for something we use even less.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's not only the expense of the car. There's also, don't forget, the car infrastructure.
Right.
So we're all paying for that,
paying
even if
for
we're
that.
not driving.
So state and local governments are spending on roads and highways $500 per person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. Think about it, they could just be handing us $500 a person.
That's $500 a year, right?
Yeah, every year.
Uh-huh. Nice.
And that doesn't even include federal spending.
Which is a lot more, I'm sure.
Yeah, because of highways, right?
And of course, there's plenty of private costs with parking facilities, garages, whatever, driveways, all of that.
You can't build a house today without putting a garage in, right? I mean, you're going to have to do that. The bank will not give you a loan unless you put a garage in your house. So we have to do it. It's like we're required, and cities and counties, and they're all required to put in so many parking places and have road systems that are so big to accommodate the cars.
Right behind the Post Carbon Institute, where Rob and I work, right next to our building, we work in this old building that was built in early 1900s or something like that, maybe earlier than that, right? It's on the National Registry of Historic Places. Beautiful old building. Right next to us is going, a 500 car garage.
Yeah, 500 car parking garage.
Is that what's going in there?
Yeah.
Well, and probably some student housing, but the garage is more offensive. I mean, suppose we get rid of car culture. Like, what can you do with a parking garage? What's this going to become? Like an awesome skate park or something?
That's a good idea.
That's basically it.
Well, people can live in it. Shelter from the storm.
I've always wanted to live on a concrete ramp. What an awesome
Nice
place
angle.
to live.
You just roll down the hill every night.
You've got like your little living stalls right,
exactly.
Yeah,
They already-
lined out.
Public service announcement. Don't let a share design your next homestead.
The homeless shelter for all the climate refugees in the future.
Right. Yeah, I live in number 198.
Exactly.
Okay, well, that's the money side, but what about the pollution side?
Well, yeah, I mean, so greenhouse gas emissions are a big deal nowadays. I think people
Really?
care.
Nowadays?
They care about them. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
So transportation is 28% of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. It's the largest. It's pretty darn close to electricity, but it is the biggest, and then cars and trucks. So this is sort of like not the stuff that necessarily is commercial vehicles, but the cars and trucks we might drive around are 83% of those greenhouse gas emissions. It's just a huge proportion for private vehicles.
So when the climate scientists say we've got 10 or 12 years where we've got to just cut our use of fossil fuels in half, I mean, it seems like that would be the place. You go after the biggest.
Yeah.
But are we ready for that at all?
Well,
I mean,
it's a big challenge. I mean, you talked earlier about how many electric vehicles there are,
3.
Exactly. You have one of them. So two others. Right. We got a long way to go if we're going to substitute, and there are real limitations in that. I mean, by far, most of transportation is driven by liquid fuels, and that's oil, right? And, in the form of gasoline and diesel and whatnot. And it's, there's a reason why we burn that stuff. It's incredibly energy dense, has a ton of literal power in it. You could transport it safely, relatively safely. It's been incredibly cheap for the amount of energy that it provides. And it's just a big challenge to transition the vehicle fleet to alternatives. I mean,
but it's also in our heads. It's like the status symbol. Like we've been marketed that this is an extension of ourself.
I know.
Some people will buy the Ford 350 Power Stroke because it's incredible, and it's sort of, and others though are supposedly agreeing, are going to buy that Prius hybrid, but then they're gonna fly to Italy for a vacation. So I don't think anyone's like necessarily better, but I'm saying this is like an extension of our identity.
I know. I'm going to get the kit.
Oh.
That's Michael Knight's car that talks with the red light that goes across the front.
Yeah,
Michael, you're driving too fast. Hey, I'm Rob. I'm not Michael.
Right. Are you sure it's not your middle name?
Right.
Well, it's true. I think that, and that's what's crazy. This guy that you were talking about, that was on the Daily Show,
Daniel Sperling.
Sperling. I mean, he's talking about how we're going to get to 2 billion cars, and I think big part of the reason, beyond the fact that we are kind of locked in terms of the infrastructure that we developed towards it, is the fact that people can't imagine themselves, at least in a lot of America,
right,
not having a car. It's tied to their identity. It's people take an immense amount of pride in the kind of car that they have.
Right.
They're willing to waste a shit ton of money
right.
on this thing because of what it represents for them.
Yeah.
We've got so much of our language is tied to cars, great music, Springsteen, others like, it's like, it's part of that rite of passage when you grow up, you get your driver's license.
You had a Jetta, right?
Freedom.
You had a Jetta.
I had a Jetta.
Okay. I had a Volkswagen Rabbit, so we're Volkswagen friends.
Yeah.
We're of the people. Yeah. So it makes
screwing up the environment for the rest of us.
It makes it hard, and I mean, and what are the alternatives?
Yeah.
We're gonna ride your bike?
Well, yes, but I do want to say that I think we've all had some pretty outstanding experiences. Taking a car somewhere that we couldn't have gotten to.
Right.
I wasn't going to walk to Yosemite. I understand the allure of having a car, being able to. It's a freedom kind of a thing. And
car camping was so much fun.
Yeah.
Going hours away and sort of end of a road. And
I mean, one of my best memories is road tripping with my brother across the country.
Yeah. But you open the door to bikes. I think of the three of us, I'm the most bike nerdy, and I feel like. When I learned to ride a bike, it's probably like how a lot of people feel like when they got their driver's license. Like I just felt free. Like here's this thing that I could get around on. I could go fast. I could get where I wanted to go. And I think a lot of people, when the car becomes available to them, they lose that sense of fun with a bike. But
right.
I just never did. And I love commuting by bike.
Because you didn't get hit by a car when you were 14 years old.
Yeah, I suppose that's a little bit of a deterrent. You do have to be kind of crazy to get out there on our streets where 400,000 people have died in the last 15 years. Like that, you got to kind of pretend like you're not going to get hurt, like that semi isn't going to flatten you out there. But no, really, I mean, I've ridden a bike actually all the way across the United States. Like you can take a bike really far. Now, obviously, I didn't do it in 2 days or 3 days like you could in a car, but I think what people don't realize is that the bicycle is the most efficient form of transportation humans have ever invented.
Yeah, by far.
By efficient, I mean the amount of distance that you get for the amount of calories that you put in. Mm-hmm. So, a car, you think about...
Wait. I just sit on my butt in the car, and I just sit in my big gulp. I'm not putting in anything. I'm. What are you talking about?
I think you forgot about a share in the highly dense energy that he was talking about.
Okay.
Remember that? The oil that goes in there?
Okay. So you're counting that.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, and I mean, also think about when you are driving your car, let's say you're just going to the store, you're carrying like 3,000 to 5,000 pounds with you. That hardly seems necessary to pick up, a carton of eggs and
the
six-pack.
Engine is not particularly efficient. I mean, they've tried to make cars more efficient, but it's not particularly efficient.
There's limits to what you can do with the Carnot cycle.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like something like 1% of the energy, goes to actually moving your ass.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So a bike has got to be better than that.
Well, also on a bike, I mean, there's a few other things I love. Like, let's say you're doing your daily commute. You're actually waking up. You're getting in shape. You're staying fit. You actually see the place that you're going through. When you're in a car surrounded by that glass and steel, you kind of just move through it and don't pay much attention. You fiddle with the radio or whatever. But
you get to listen to Rush Limbaugh.
Oh well, geez. I
mean, there are upsides.
I'm done.
To it.
I'm gonna go run over my bike now with a car and just listen to Rush.
That's what Rush is telling you to do.
Right. besides interacting with place, it's also a way to interact with people. Like on that trip I was talking about where we went across country, people would invite us to stay with them. People would just offer us food. They were interested in what we were doing and why we were riding our bikes like that. That's never happened to me when I've driven my car across. Like, nobody gives a shit about who I am or what I'm doing, and they're certainly not inviting.
Out of the way.
Yeah, they might want my money, right? Or they might, but it's. I think bikes. It's a much different experience, both environmentally and socially.
Yeah, I would love to have it easier and more friendly to bike more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it's going to take, because right now we've kind of created an infrastructure, especially here in the West. We live in Oregon, that is completely built around the car. Mm-hmm. It's almost like an obligation to have a car. But the funny thing is, it didn't used to be that way. Right?
There was life before car.
There was life before car.
100 years ago, it was very
it's different. Hard for us, in suburban America, the communities that were built, after World War II and the highway system was built, to sort of imagine that. But like, if you go to the East Coast or cities that were established, before cars existed, the road was not there for cars. In fact, streets were communal spaces. People would walk down the street. They'd have to watch out for horses and carts and shit. But it was a place that people congregated. Kids would be literally playing in the street all the time.
Yeah, I'm picturing Spanky and Alfalfa playing marbles or whatever.
And in fact, I talked earlier about all the deaths, that occurred in the early days of car culture, and part of that had to do with the fact that that transition took a while. Yeah. It's like people, it took a while not only for there to be speed limit laws and stop signs and all the things that had to be put in place to protect people who were driving. It was also just the fact that people didn't think that this street was something meant for the car. And there was actually a big backlash, against cars. There were protests. I think it was in Chicago. There was a protest of thousands of kids. They organized and they were marching down the street because they wanted the fucking street
think of this.
back.
You're playing hopscotch or jacks or something like that.
Stickball.
And some jerk in a Studebaker just starts flying through your playground.
Yeah.
But I've been pissed.
And so a lot of politicians, elected officials felt like they had to kind of push back, against cars. And car aficionados, this is even really before there was a powerful industry. They felt like they were on the defense of all the car clubs, all the people that were really into cars. A lot of them were of the kind of wealthier class,
rich bastards, I'm sure.
And they sort of said, we got to get organized and push back on this whole thing. In fact, the term jaywalking, that came from the sort of pro-car auto club culture, basically saying, we got to make people that walk in the street look like assholes. It's their fault, right? So a jay was a term for somebody who's kind of a country bumpkin, right?
Oh, man.
So calling somebody a jaywalker meant you're a fucking country idiot walking in the middle of the street, you don't know what you're doing. So you got to get out of the street, right?
So we should start jaywalking as a protest. Just get out on I-5 or and just walk right down the middle lane.
I hope you've got a very protective bubble that you could wrap yourself in.
Well, I will ride my bike.
I'll let you go first.
I'll recreate the scene that you had of watching the bike go through your legs as you're flying through the air.
But so this was not something that always was, right? There was an orchestrated effort to kind of take over these thoroughfares, these public spaces in the interest of the car.
And you hit it, orchestrated. I mean, the case with GM where the streetcar conspiracy, there were GM and Firestone and Standard Oil and some other companies. They got together, they colluded, and they bought up the transit systems of 25 cities.
Wow.
With the express purpose of dismantling them so that you would have to buy a car to be able to get around in any kind of an efficient way. And in 1949, GM was actually, they were convicted and fined $5,000.
That's not enough.
The company's treasurer,
I know.
Well, the company's treasurer, who kind of spearheaded this conspiracy, he was fined the princely sum of $1. So what? I don't. Who knows?
Well,
what,
come on, with inflation, that was probably what, like
$1.75, the limit on gas. Yeah. Well, you wonder like how far did the conspiracy go? Did they pay off the judges or?
Well, that's the thing. You realize that what's going on is probably government's kind of going, well, yeah. Here, we're gonna make you pay for this.
And now, fast forward 100 years, right? And even here in where we live in Corvallis, Oregon, pretty progressive city, it's actually known as quite a bike-friendly community.
Yeah.
The streets aren't really designed for people using them for anything other than, driving in a car. Like when we moved here, we wanted to put our basketball hoop out on the street so my kids could play.
Of course. Who doesn't want to play basketball out on the street?
Our driveway's too steep, we couldn't do that. So we parked it down on the street where it was flat. And our neighbors called the city, to complain. And the city basically said, look, we probably wouldn't do anything with this, but since we got to complain, you guys got to remove the basketball hoop. And by the way,
did you block in your neighbor's car with the basketball hoop?
Yeah, if I knew who it was, I would have probably done that. But they basically said there's actually law in the books and ordinance that you can't play in the street. They don't really enforce it all the time, but it basically is law that your kids can't go play in the street. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's crazy. So, look, what's our recourse? Rob, you talked about the benefits and the pleasure of riding a bicycle, but a lot of people, even if they're physically able to do it, it doesn't feel safe to do it.
Well, now that I've heard that playing in the streets is against the law, I'm not sure I'm allowed to bike anymore because I look at that as playing.
Too much fun. Yeah, you're having too much fun.
That's no good.
I think ultimately this means we got to take back the street.
I fully agree. You guys, we work with Richard Heinberg, and he does this really cool online course called Think Resilience. And, if you go through that, you get this really big systems perspective of the crises we're facing and how to move toward building resilient communities. Well, in that, the thing that struck me the most in the whole series is when he's talking about the way that infrastructure informs culture. What he's saying is the belief systems, the way we behave, is largely dependent on the infrastructure that we have to work with. And Richard didn't make this stuff up. It comes from a lot of anthropological research, started mostly by a guy named Marvin Harris. And if you're interested, you can look it up. It's called cultural materialism. Mm-hmm. But this notion, at first I didn't quite get it. But when we started thinking about cars and I was giving it more and more thought, I really was like, wow, that's so true. And what really cemented it is that Sharon and I got to go visit a colleague who's working on getting a commuter train in Vermont. And I was thinking about when you have an infrastructure for cars, it's a very competitive infrastructure. If the three of us are driving, we're kind of in competition with each other. I basically don't want you
get out of
get
my
the
way.
fuck out of my way.
Exactly. And I'm going to honk and I'm going to yell at you. And it's like the more people you service, the worse it is. And everybody's kind of doing their own thing. And it's just a real competitive spirit. And in a train, it's a much more cooperative spirit. I mean, you're all going the same way. We might, rather than drive up on each other's bumpers and yell at each other, instead we'll just have a conversation over a beer while we're riding the train to our destination. And those infrastructures are very different, and your behavior is very different depending on which mode of transportation you're using.
You can drink and ride, but you can't drink and drive.
Well, they're sold right there.
It's true. I think that the physical world around us, we don't consider it. We don't step back and imagine how it could be different, but we need to do that. At the same time, I think where we are here, right, 2018, with the crisis at hand in terms of climate change, the fact that we spent trillions of dollars, and I don't even know how many billions of barrels of oil building this infrastructure.
A waste.
Right? And James Howard Kunstler, the great critic of kind of the spaces and architecture that we've built, called the suburbs and the highway system the worst allocation of resources in human history. But we've allocated it, right?
Yeah.
We have this cost. And not only, we might say, hey, well, let's spend money on something else. Let's do this differently. I think all that requires a ton of energy to build a different infrastructure.
Right. Do we have that?
Do we have it? Do we have the money? Do we have the time? So I think when we think about changing our relationship with infrastructure or changing the infrastructure, it might have to be done in a way where we look at what we have around us and reappropriate it.
Retrofit it rather than like build a whole parallel system.
Yeah. So like if the streets were taken over for the car, right? There were streets before that. Well, let's take streets back from the car.
Yeah.
What if we did something crazy, like instead of putting bike lanes in all kinds of places, if we don't have them already, why don't we just take over part of the street, at least to begin with? We don't have to like stop cars driving in downtown, although that would be amazing, like here in Corvallis.
I would love it. Let's take some percentage. Even any town in America, if you said, let's just start with 10%. 10% of the streets are going to be bike and pedestrian only 5 years from now. That would be incredible compared to what's been done. There is no place.
I think we could do. I think we can and should be more ambitious than that. I mean, let's set a goal of saying, hey, half of our streets in 5 or 10 years are not allowed for cars to drive on.
I would love it. I mean, think about being able to get around, how safe and comfortable it would feel to ride a current city street where there's no traffic, and you're not on this tiny little bike lane shoved off to the side where they blow all the leaves, and you're not the second class citizen anymore. You're
worried about somebody pulling out because they can't see you.
And this sounds like, wow, radical, big thing, but like let's look at what we're being told by climate scientists.
Yeah,
we better cut in half in like a dozen years. Then we better cut a half again.
Yeah.
And we better cut in half again. So this is like an answer to that actually is at the scale of what's required. So if anyone says, no, we can't do this, like, what's your idea?
Right. And not only that, but if you think about the incentives that people have, right? We've incentivized car culture, right? So we reward that and we disincentivize people having to like walk or bike or whatever. Yeah. If you flip that a little bit, you took away half the streets from cars.
Yeah.
Oh, the people who are still driving cars are going to be even more miserable, and they're going to see people, happily riding their bicycle, and so the incentive, the rewards and disincentives are going to be flipped, which is what we need to do.
Well, and let's take just a quick moment to I know that not everybody can ride a bike or can walk or can get around that way. We've got people who are aging out or people with disabilities, but we can find ways to keep the mobility for those people. I mean, I'll happily rickshaw you to wherever you want to go. I'll take you to bars all night long or whatever. But seriously, I mean, there are pedicabs. There's ways we can get people around, even on non-motor vehicle streets.
Sure, and they've done that historically in lots of places in the world, and we're going to be doing. Yeah, it was still doing it today.
I love it. I love the simple call to action here. Take back the streets.
Yeah, just be careful when you step out in the street.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you guys. I'm going to go down to the auto museum and hit some cars with a sledgehammer now.
All right. I will go get some cash so I could bond you out.
Okay. I'm going to go plug in my electric bike.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the podcast. And while you're at it, rate or review it at iTunes. That really helps get it in front of more people. To learn more, visit postcarbon.org/crazytown. And if you want to actually learn something instead of listening to us bozos, you should check out Postcarbon Institute's Think Resilience course. It's 4 hours, $20, and will seriously change the way you see the world. Catch you next time on the mean streets of Crazytown.
All right, Asher, Jason, this is the best part of the podcast. We get to talk about our sponsor.
We love our sponsors.
Yes, we
sure
do.
Thank you, sponsors.
Yes, and this time it's the Plastic Wrapping Alliance.
Incredible people there.
Yeah, do you know about that company? It's just unbelievable what they do. They're all about efficiency.
That's right.
Totally.
So typically, plastic wrapping, you wrap a product, you give it to the consumer uses it, throws it away. Somehow it ends up in the ocean.
Yeah.
Well, Plastic Wrapping Alliance just eliminates the middleman.
Right.
Totally efficient. They take the plastic wrapping and they just fly it to the ocean and drop it in.
The Pacific Gyre, I think, is their target right now.
Yeah, it was amazing. They actually took me up on one of their flights to drop. it was incredible looking down on all that plastic. It was, it was amazing.
It brings a tear to the eye.
Yeah, I think you can see it from like the
you can see it from space.
The space thing they got up there.
Oh, like if you're riding in a Tesla that Elon Musk launched up
flying
there,
Tesla.
you can.
Well,
you can
eventually that's going to come back and then be part of the plastic shit gyre.
Yeah. Oh, it's awesome. The people at Plastic Wrapping Alliance are so good that they even go further. So rather than just dumping it in the ocean, they'll actually take some of it and wrap it around whales and dolphins and sea turtles. So it's getting it to that final spot.
Wow,
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if that's where it's going to end up anyway,
that's where you
let's do it as efficiently,
right,
and as quickly and as cheaply as possible.
That's right. That's right.
These guys are geniuses.
Yeah, eliminate the middleman.
Thank you, Plastic Wrapping Alliance.